Hey everybody, it's B007 here for another movie review podcast, and I'm talking about three movies that are out in the UK this week. The first is the big Marvel blockbuster Black Panther, which is out on Valentine's Day. That's followed by a truly beautiful love story, which I hope wins all the Oscars, by Giullermo Del Toro, called The Shape of Water. And the final one is a really lovely, heartwarming, but absolutely smart and perceptive relationship film about a mother and daughter called Lady Bird, also Oscar nominated for its director Greta Gerwig. So let's begin with Black Panther, which comes to our screen loaded with a lot of political baggage, and I think self-appointed in that respect. It's kind of funny seeing everyone fall over themselves to be so excited about the first black action movie, as if films by Denzel Washington, Will Smith, Wesley Snipes never happened, and even as if heroes like Lando Calrissian never happened. But I guess they're right, this is a watershed moment, because it's a major franchise blockbuster that not only stars a single male action hero, but has a whole cast of amazing female and male black talent. And I can't help but agree that there is a qualitative leap when you see this vast array of talent, well, the vast majority speaking with African accents, and where a lot of the action is set in an Africa that is so different from the kind of Africa that we normally see on screen, but one that is full of technology and scientific knowledge and wonder, although this is a little bit offset by the cliche of spiritualism and searching for the spirits of your fathers and all that sort of Lion King nonsense. So, in general, I'm all in favour of Black Panther coming to our screens. I think it is a great thing, but I do feel that a lot of the hype that I've been seeing on Twitter and social media after preview screenings has, in a sense, been a bit patronising, because it's reflected excitement at the fact that the film exists, rather than a critical analysis of whether or not it's any good. And actually, I think it's pretty meh. I think it's, a decent entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's occasionally very funny, but it's often very dull. It's very overcomplicated. It's about 45 minutes too long. And its titular character, as portrayed by Chadwick Boseman, really, is the least interesting thing about the film. So the story has a lot of strands. It's hard to know a little bit where to begin, but effectively, I think the unifying factor is that we have this African country, thinly veiled version of Rwanda, which was blessed many millennia ago with a rare metal called vibranium, and it gives their king, Black Panther, extraordinary power, and the country futuristic technology. And the film takes this premise and runs with it and explores it. So there are three basic attitudes you can take to the vibranium. Number one, that the tech should be hidden, and it should be hidden to prevent its exploitation by others, quote unquote imperialists, I guess. Second, that you should share the vibranium with the world for good and not hog the technology. And third, that you should use the vibranium to get revenge on people who've done you wrong and actually exploit it to achieve domination over the rest of the world. So broadly speaking, the policy of Wakanda, the country that has the vibranium, has always been the first one, which is to use the technology to live a very good life themselves, but keep themselves hidden from outside view and very much protect themselves. And really the story of the title character, T'Challa, who is the current Black Panther, is a very classical Greek tale of a son learning to confront and go against his father's assumptions about how the tech should be exploited and to become his own man. And, the father's wariness is made very plausible by the existence of a rather cliched, caricatured, nasty white South African thief called Ulysses Klaue, who's played by Andy Serkis, who's having evidently a lot of fun, and is being chased down by a CIA agent called Everett Ross, because obviously you've got to have one white man who's good, and he's played by Martin Freeman. So that's the first let's just keep it to ourselves and protect it. The second attitude, which is that we should share the vibranium with the world, is embodied by Black Panther's little sister Shuri, who's played by Letitia Wright. And she really does steal a lot of the movie. She's very smart. She's a tech genius. She's basically the sort of the black girl version of Q in Bond. And she believes that tradition should be thrown off, modernism should be embraced, and that they should be open and outward with the world. And then the final kind of evil, nasty position that you should use the tech to exploit the world is taken on by Shuri and Black Panther's cousin, the subtlety of a sledgehammer named Eric Killmonger. So he's got beef with the family because he's not been acknowledged as being part of them, and for various reasons. And so he wants to take the tech, basically dethrone Black Panther and start, shipping out weapons of mass destruction and doing damage. So I think it's a really interesting setup. The film works really super well in its opening, I would say 45 minutes. I think the prologue, actually even before the prologue, the opening credits has animation that's incredibly beautiful and tells the sort of origin mythology story of Black Panther with beautiful precision. It's very concise and it takes us through World War One and Two, and the imagery is lovely. And then we get into a prologue that really nicely sets up a lot of the familial tensions between father and son, father and uncle, and that moves very quickly indeed. And it also establishes the man who we think is going to be the antagonist, Ulysses Klaue, but also the person who's really going to be the actual threat, who's Eric Killmonger. I think the problem is that we get into sort of the middle section of the film, and it seems to get stupidly bogged down in this tribe's going to go against that tribe, and one of the tribes that was off in a cave is now back and wants to do X, Y, and Z. And then the cousin comes back, and there's a civil war in Wakanda, and which side's the army? Oh my goodness, it's so dull. And, do we even really care about Andy Serkis's character now? And what's the CIA doing there? Who knows? And the whole thing is just so dull. And at one point, one of the leaders of a tribe who's been living in a cave all these years, in the midst of this sort of like soppy scene, it's like, come on, guys, are you done? Let's move on. And I felt like cheering at that point, like, come on, let's move this forward a little bit. And then we kind of move into the final act of the film, which, as with all Marvel, is just this massive action set piece. And it's just really overblown. It's bad CGI, bad scoring. It's exactly what we think is going to happen. And then there's some sort of soppy Lion King-esque sort of emotional ending in the sunlight and the sunset. As the credits rolled in this film, there was someone in the preview audience I was watching this with who was very excited. I mean, in fairness, they all absolutely loved it. And he shouted out, rewind. And I felt like I wanted to shout back, edit. Take about 45 minutes out of this movie. I really feel there's a very good, very funny, very fast-paced 95-minute action movie within this very baggy 134-minute running time. But, the problem with the Black Panther is more than just a baggy script. I feel that Chadwick Boseman really is a charismaless, po-faced lead, and perhaps the worst lead actor in a franchise film since Henry Cavill in Superman. And the worst thing about it is that he doesn't just play the role with a South African accent, he actually seems to be pastiching Nelson Mandela, and it's just appalling. His entire acting range seems to be to bite his lip and look concerned, and he's absolutely acted off the screen by Daniel Kaluuya from Get Out, Oscar-nominated Daniel Kaluuya, as W'Kabi, who's one of the tribe leaders in Wakanda. Not to mention Michael B. Jordan from Creed, who is the cousin Killmonger. And maybe it's that problem that you have with the Dark Knight trilogy, or Batman in general, where all the baddies are always so much more interesting than the good guy, so quote-unquote good guy. And that's before we get to the women, and I think something very symmetric is going on with the female characters. So you get Lupita Nyong'o as the big name star, who's the female counterpart to Black Panther. She's the love interest. And as the movie starts, we think she's also going to be super feisty and interesting and awesome, because she's rescuing these women who've been kidnapped by Boko Haram. But she also turns out to basically just be there to be supportive and, be in love with Black Panther. But there are far more interesting female action heroes in there. So, for instance, Black Panther has this general called Okoye, played by Danai Gurira. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And she is absolutely kick-ass, literally, but also in her use of cutting humour. Really loved her character, and I loved that actress. And I also did, as I said before, really love Letitia Wright as Shuri, and I think she's probably the breakout star of this hugely overcrowded ensemble film. It's like everyone's in there. Like you turn a corner and there's Forrest Whitaker. Oh, there's Angela Bassett. It's just kind of like, seriously, if you're a big name black actor and you're not in this film, you should feel really, really pissed off. Like, where's Idris Elba? He's the only one who's not in here. And I have to say, I'm not going to be popular for saying this, but I think that All the actors I've mentioned above, and a lot of them are really good, are basically outclassed by Andy Serkis, who's by far the most memorable person in this film. He has this brilliant cameo as the kind of, I don't know what you call him, thief, smuggler, Claw. And he seems to be having so much fun on screen, and frankly, far more than I did in the cinema. I think to sum up, Black Panther is a film I really want to do well, and I'm sure it will do. And I think that's going to be inspiring to a whole generation of kids, and that's enough, right? I'm not the target audience for this, and I don't have to like it. But I just think it's such a shame that having waited so long for a big black-led ensemble action movie, the result is so anodyne. I mean, it's like you take a little Bond villain-like character here, you take a character that's like Q from Bond, you get your classic Marvel action scenes and tech, and in different scores, some sort of basic CGI, and then for no reason at all, let's just throw in a cataphract rhino and a lot of cliche about internecine tribal strife, and the result is Black Panther. And to be honest, it's not a film that's half as good as Wesley Snipes in Blade all those decades ago, and it's actually pretty middling by the standards of the MCU. So, Black Panther, wanted to love it, lots of people did love it. I think without putting words in their mouth or being patronizing, I think they're more excited about Black Panther being in existence at all than really truly commenting on the film. And I think it's one of those films that's going to come out to really good reviews. And then as time wears on, people are going to slowly kind of cool on it or become more realistic about its strengths and weaknesses. Still, I'm sure you're all going to go watch Black Panther in cinema if you disagree with my take. I'd love to hear from you either on the YouTube channel or on the blog at b007.com. Black Panther has a running time of 134 minutes. It's rated 12A for moderate violence, injury detail, and a really funny rude gesture. And it goes on global release on Wednesday, the 14th of February. Okay, so over to The Shape of Water, which I saw at the BFI London Film Festival last October, and it was probably the best film I saw last year, if not in the top 3. It's just the most beautifully imagined, moving, funny, subversive love story, and it just warms the cockles of my heart that it exists, and that it's been taken to the heart of the Oscars, the Academy, just shocks me because it's just such a film for lovers of beautiful art and art house cinema, and it just strikes me as the most delicately fragile and beautiful film. Anyways, I would say that, I had high expectations for this film. It's by Giullermo Del Toro, who's one of my favorite directors, and he did not disappoint with this lovely adult fairy tale that speaks to our times. It speaks to times of fear of the other and the alien, and shows us love, the shape of water, We're all surrounded by it, we all need it, it's everywhere, it's malleable, it takes many forms, but it's essential to our being. So what is the film about? Sally Hawkins from Funny Ha Ha stars Elisa, a mute cleaner who works at this very mysterious government facility in 1960s Baltimore. She has 2 good friends. The first is her neighbour, who's a washed-up advertising draftsman, played by Richard Jenkins. And the second is her fellow cleaner, played by Octavia Spencer, most famous from The Help. And her life changes when she's cleaning up one of these very locked-down, secure facilities and meets a merman, played by Doug Jones. So any of you watching the new Star Trek Discovery, he's the guy who plays Saru in that. But, Guillermo del Toro has worked with him for many years, so you probably know him from his other films. And this beautiful merman who, I think Del Toro says he spent 3 years sculpting and designing the body of this merman to be elegant like a classical statue, but also sensual and attractive despite the fact that it's other. And he is a character that you can fall in love with. So you see why Sally Hawkins' character does. So this poor merman falls into the hands of this awful, torturing, racist, sexually harassing man played by Michael Shannon, who's so good at those twisted, nasty, evil men. And he wants basically the merman to be dissected so that the CIA can exploit whatever science is there to be found. And that offends deeply the scientific mind of a researcher played by Michael Stuhlbarg. And let's just take a minute to talk about the fact that of many of the Oscar-nominated films this year, Michael Stuhlbarg plays a role, a supporting role. And I think why he's always perfectly cast is that he has this ability to, at the same time, look both sinister but also add such warmth and humanity to his role. And he kind of switches sides. He starts off on the side of the captors, and then he ends up teaming up with Elisa to liberate the merman from this government facility and to unite the lovers. I think, oh my goodness, where to start? There's so much to love about this film. We have the beautiful world that Giullermo Del Toro creates. It's a kind of hyper 1960s America with this deep marine green visual palette, and it has a delight in vintage cinemas and interiors, as well as, that obsessive bourgeois perfection of 1960s American suburban life. So, it's a time of great confidence for America. It's after World War II. It's a very rich country, and everyone has these shark fin tail cars. And I don't know, he seems to really absorb what's in the physical environment and use that very expressively in his films, which I absolutely adore. But then I love the fact that although his films have this fairy tale quality and this almost childlike belief in the ability of love to cut through and to win, he's also realistic and adult. So there are sort of, explicit scenes of Elisa masturbating or a pet coming to a bad end. I mean, this is truly adult fantasy, and it doesn't patronize its characters and shows. What I love about Sally Hawkins' character is a very fully rounded adult woman who has control of her sexuality. And although she enters into this very romantic love affair, does so with her eyes wide open. And I think, in a sense, what completes this beautiful story is the fact that all the visuals that Del Toro gives us are beautifully complemented by an orchestral score by Alexandre Desplat, who again has this love of the movies and the history of cinema, and you can see all that influencing and coming through in the score. So, is this a perfect film? No, there are a couple of tweaks I would have made. There's a dreamlike reverie that takes place, and I just felt the movie was fantastic enough without that one particular scene. I think Michael Shannon is becoming a bit typecast as the sexually messed up government man that he played in Boardwalk Empire. And I think Octavia Spencer, do we really need one more, almost finger snapping sassy black woman? I kind of feel that she is such a more... I almost feel like she's a better actress than the parts that she's either being offered or accepting, and that she needs to move beyond that. But these are very, very minor gripes. I think The Shape of Water is a truly great, truly beloved film, and I strongly urge you to check it out. So The Shape of Water has a running time of 190 minutes and is rated R in the USA and 15 in the UK for strong language, violence, sex and nudity. It opened in the USA last year and opens on Valentine's Day in the UK this year, which is so fitting. It's a beautiful film to take your loved one to. Okay, last and not least is Lady Bird, which is another film that I saw at the London Film Festival last October, but a complete surprise because it was the surprise film. It was introduced by Greta Gerwig and it stars Saoirse Ronan. I've had a very difficult time with Greta Gerwig in the past. I found some of her performances in films by Noah Baumbach have been a little bit too cutesy and millennial angsty and a little bit grating for me. But her last film, Mistress America, and maybe another one before that, I found her to be really convincing. And I think you can see her maturing with every film that she's made until finally now she writes and directs one. And Lady Bird, I'm pleased to report, is a funny, moving, beautifully observed relationship drama centering around the teenage girl of the title. And it stars Saoirse Ronan from On Chesil Beach in the lead role, and she's matched by her mother, played by Laurie Metcalf of Roseanne fame, which I only realised after watching the movie. I was like, well, who is this woman? She's really... it's bugging me that she reminds me of someone, but that's who she is. So the star of the film, as I said, is Lady Bird. Her real name is Christine, and she's just a very smart, quirky, frustrated teenager in 1990s Sacramento. So this is obviously influenced by the real life of Greta Gerwig. And she adopts this Lady Bird persona to mark herself as different. And she dreams and dreams of moving to New York and attending a liberal arts college where she can finally express herself and find people with interests similar to her own. And everything in the world around her seems to be telling her she can't achieve this. Like, her parents aren't rich, they can't really afford college. Her school teachers laugh at her and say she's not clever enough to go. Um, and in general, she finds life very frustrating. And the central tragedy of the film is that she takes this out on the woman who's probably the most like her, which is her mother, Marion, who is another strong personality. And really, this is a film about two alpha females butting heads with each other. And it's genuinely tragic because Marion has put her life on hold and is working tremendously hard to earn the money to put her daughter through private school. So when she sees her daughter maybe ashamed of her working class or low middle class roots, that's very hurtful for her. So as I said, the central relationship in this film is between mother and daughter. And I love that. I love centering that film around females. And I think perhaps in the light of the Me Too movement, that's why this film has garnered such praise and is doing so well with award nominations. I mean, it deserves to anyway because it's good enough on its own. And I really hope it wins on its own merits if it does that at the Oscars, rather than just because people think it's, I don't know. It's a very easy film that isn't going to offend anyone, so it enables you to express a certain political sympathy with the Me Too movement and with, you know, the new rise of feminism without being too violently angry and uncomfortable and hard to pass. In other words, this is a film that isn't Rose McGowan. This is a film that's still basically a light comedy. But there is more to it than just the mother-daughter relationship. There's also Christine's early relationships. You get Timothée Chalamet from Call Me by Your Name in there in a small role. And it's also about the relationship with the father, who's played by Tracy Letts in a really wonderful, tender performance. And there's something again about modern life in this economy that he's a guy who has lost his job, and of course, Christine is way too self-centered to realize this for quite some time. And he's overqualified. He's applying for jobs, and he eventually goes up for a job that his son is applying for. And I think there's just something beautiful about seeing a decent, selfless man. Really reminded me a lot of actually Willem Dafoe's character in The Florida Project, just being ground down by the modern economy. So there's a lot of beautiful observation in the writing of this film, and I really think Greta Gerwig deserves credit for that. As ever, no film, or rarely, is a film perfect, and I think there were some flaws in this film. In particular, I thought that there was a really lovely relationship building between Christine and her boyfriend Ronan, played by Lucas Hedges from Manchester by the Sea, that amazing film from last year. And my only kind of minor criticism of the film is that I wanted to see that relationship after their pivotal moment, and it somehow feels like it got dropped away. It was strange to me he didn't reoccur. But that's a really small and minor point. I think this is an incredible directorial debut from Greta Gerwig. And I really admire her wanting to give us a very authentic coming-of-age drama and her willingness to show life as it is. Financial struggles, losing your job, having to shop at Goodwill, selfishness, arguments, even just letting Saoirse Ronan have acne, showing a teenage girl on screen not looking perfectly coiffed and perfectly skinned and acting perfectly in a perfect three-act redemption. It just feels that this was a movie about how we live, I don't know, just rather than some kind of fantasy version of teenage life. So there we have it. Lady Bird has a running time of 94 minutes. It's rated 15 for very strong language and brief strong nudity. It was released in the USA last year and is out in the UK on Friday. So there you have it, 3 very strong films. Black Panther, which I think is going to be an enormous success despite the fact that I didn't get on with it very well. The Shape of Water, which is truly one of the most astounding films you'll ever see. and Lady Bird, which is also deeply impressive and moving. Obviously, I think you should go see the latter two, 100%. But whatever you see at the cinema this weekend, I really hope you have a great time. And I'd love to hear from you. Comments on the YouTube channel, on the blog at bina007.com. Thank you so much for listening.